Welcome back, guys. We're gonna, what we'd like to do is go ahead and move up 3 and 4.
There'll be an amendment also that's not on their agenda.
Move those up first so that we can get Mr. Beaudry out of here, and then we'll do the directors last. So, is everybody in agreement with that? Okay. All right, number 3.
All right, number 3, contractual agreement with Wesley Foundation, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The contract for the lease and rental agreement between Rutherford County Schools and Wesley Foundation is for rental of a house located at 1607 Elrod Street, adjacent to the Wesley Foundation at MTSU. This house and the Wesley Foundation Student Center will be a central location from which the Transition Academy program will be based. This agreement includes the use of space at the Wesley Foundation Student Center at no additional charge. The monthly rental cost of the house is $1,500 per month from August 1st of 2021 through July 31st of 2022. Motion to approve the lease and rental agreement of the house located at 1607 Elrod Street from August 1st of 2021 through July 31st of 2022 at $1,500 per month. This rental, which includes the use of Wesley Foundation, will provide continuing location at MTSU for community-based Transition Academy for 18 and 22-year-olds with cognitive and development disabilities. The total cost not to exceed $18,000 for a 12-month period will be paid from IDEA Part B Special Education Funds.
All right, any questions?
Question. How many students is this?
12.
It's usually about 10, isn't it? About 10.
It was 12 last year.
It fluctuates.
12.
It's a great program. If you haven't had the opportunity to go over there and see that, I would strongly encourage you to do so.
Just give us a date.
I always like the Thanksgiving meal they prepare.
Yeah, this year we missed it because of COVID, but hopefully next year we'll be able to do that again. And the students grow so much in their independence and their ability to access the community. It's definitely a program that we would like to grow over time because it's.
I'm glad you said that.
such a great opportunity for our young adults with disabilities.
Are we looking into any other locations?
Yeah.
So we can't,
So I would love to look for other locations. I don't have any leads on anything right now. We also have Project Search, which is a similar program at the Embassy Suites, which has been fabulous for the students there. We talked about growing that program as well. We would love to have an opportunity to expand in the Smyrna-Laverne area because right now those students absolutely have an opportunity to participate, but we spend a lot of time in a van for transportation.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Ms. Johnson, thank you.
Second the motion.
Ms. Moore, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 4.
All right, number 4 is the Rutherford County job description for full-time director of athletics found on tab 2. The essential functions of this position within the organization is to direct, lead, and oversee Rutherford County interscholastic athletic programs for the TWA and system compliance. Motion to approve the job description for the full-time director of athletics as presented.
Any questions?
Can we break that down a little bit more? Because I honestly did not know for years that we had an athletic director. And all my kids played sports, but I couldn't tell you really what he did. What is, and this says very general, what is he going to do and what power is he going to have?
They're going to actually be involved with, once again, like all full-time athletics in terms of middle school and high school. They will attend all training. They will provide training. They will also work with the NCAA clearinghouse on our athletes that are, planning on going to college afterward, make sure they're in compliance. They will do safety checks. They'll do coaching checks. They will do investigations. And they will help organize any kind of a big event that we may have, like a spring fling that's hosted at different of our baseball facilities in the past. They'll be part of that, and they will sit in on and form a committee for hiring practices for all of our head coaching positions.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, if they were going to oversee some of that.
They will be the one that will bring the recommendation to me.
Okay.
They're going to be housed here at the central office?
Yes, they'll be housed here, but they'll be out in the schools a lot.
So just for clarification, the vote this evening is just simply to approve the job description, correct? We've already voted on approval of the position being
That is correct.
turned into full-time.
Unless something happens on Monday at 9 a.m. that's unforeseen, it would be approved because it's in our budget.
Any other questions? All right, do we have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, the next one is not on your agenda, but this is a last-minute cleanup budget amendment for our 141. This is the final year cleanup amendment for the general purpose school fund, and it's ordered to true up payroll line items after the last certified payroll run and the purchase orders were cut off. This increases the pay lines, include items such as payouts for leave for those that are retiring employees, and also associated benefits that goes along with that. And also for our previous reclassification of our OTs and our CODA salaries under our health service line items. Motion to approve this fiscal year 2020-2021 year-end cleanup amendment as presented.
Any questions from the board members? All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Our next one is Director of Schools Evaluation Instrument and Strategic Goals.
Which one do we want to dive into first, the strategic goals, and then get into the evaluation? Is that
However you want to do it. How do you want to do it? You want to do it in the strategic goals?
Yeah.
As I understand, we're going to be looking at some quantitative data in here. So if you'll turn, I don't know if you have page 5 on your strategic goals. The first one is goal 1, educator capacity. There's 3 bullet points there. The first one is development and implementation of leadership model to continuously enhance leader capacity. That would be our Aspiring Administrators Academy, where we pull a lot of our assistant principals from, and that also would include our principal pipeline. We do provide funding for this, and the whole purpose of this thing is to grow leadership within our system. The next part is about teachers. The use of teacher leaders, instructional coaches, and curriculum to develop capacity of individual teachers and instructional items in our PLCs. Not only do we have Aspiring Administrators Academy, but we also, and a principal pipeline, but we also have a teacher leader academy. So how would we quantify that? If you will turn over to the next page, we can quantify in terms of our teacher leaders by, let me see here. On the second bullet, where it says level 3 or greater growth with our students with disability subgroup, and the third bullet says decrease the number of level 1 teachers by half each year. Okay, so that's how we would quantify that, through the data of those that attended. How we increased our capacity within the building. Mm-hmm.
Question for you on that is, how was that impacted with everything we walked through this last year with COVID and
Right.
all the things that got waived for
In,
Testing the past couple of years, do we even have real?
we actually have gotten some raw scores back, but this would be for the 22, 20, you know, the 22, 20, yeah, 23. But basically what, you know, when we go through the teachers the teachers are graded on two things: qualitative data from the evaluations they get, and also for those tested areas, for those that are in tested areas, they're giving what's called growth scores. One being significantly below expectation, two being below expectation, three being at expectation, four being above expectation, and five being significantly above. You know, and the whole purpose of building capacity with these teachers is obviously to make our kids' ability to grasp the knowledge better.
So, for instance, right now, just kind of curious, how many level 1 teachers do we have in the system right now? Even if you just ballpark it, because I'd
Yes.
like to know how
Yeah.
those numbers equate when we talk about we're going to try to
Yeah.
accomplish decreasing it by half.
Well, I will tell you this, we have less than what we ended up with. And what I'm saying is, usually, you know, after 1 year of a one, the first thing we do is provide assistance to that teacher. So what I'm trying to say, we are seeing some good results of growing some. If I would give you a ballpark figure, I could not do that without actually going back and pulling it off of, you know, old data.
Okay. That's okay. And I guess one of the questions I would ask too, since the levels are 1 to 5, right?
That's correct.
So 1 and 2 are essentially not successful.
Right.
Should we look at maybe including a goal of also decreasing the level of, or the numbers of level 2 teachers in that as well?
Ideally, we would want a level 3. That's where we
Right.
want all of them to be. I mean, we could do that also. I mean, any time that we would put, you know, we obviously, if someone's at a 2, we'd want them to go to a 3. Someone's at a 1, we'd want to make them at 3, at minimum. And there's also one in here that kind of rolls into the whole scope of the entire school on that same page there. And that's the one on page 6, I think it is, where it says on the first bullet, 90% of our schools attain a level 3 or greater composites growth. And in order to get that level 3, every tested teacher within that school would have to cumulatively come together with that 3. Now, to give you a point of reference on that, I can give you a point of reference on that one. In 2018, 2019, 70% of our schools were level 3, had a level 3. So we're talking about, we're projecting to grow that by 20%. So we can quantify that.
That helps.
All right, any questions before we move on?
If I could, you know, I need to take a look at this. One of the big things that we want to do going forward, now that we're out of this this COVID issue, is we want to place an emphasis on careers in our schools. The State Department of Ed uses the term college and career ready. Well, you know, when you look at college, for most of us, it's a finite amount of time, and a career lasts a lifetime. We've been working very hard with, you know, some of our industry leaders to trying to increase our certifications in our CTE programs, and also trying to increase what we call our early post-secondary opportunities. And when we look in here, we have some goals in here in terms of early post-secondary opportunities. One of the things in the bullet on page 6, in the goal 6, increase ready to graduate. Now, in order to be determined ready to graduate, we're talking about ACT score, or we're talking about 2 what we call early post-secondary opportunities, either dual enrollment or dual credit, and 2 certifications, or we're talking about 1 and 3 certifications. So we get graded on that. I mean, we actually get a score on ready to graduate. And this has been, of course, keep in mind, we've only had, I think, 2 testing times since we switched to all this accountability. We're currently somewhere around 48% of ready to graduate. And what that means, 48% of our students, and that would go back to 2018-19, had either met those qualifications or they didn't meet those qualifications. Now, I will tell you that there's going to be a big emphasis on certifications in highly skilled areas. That's one of the things that we feel like that we can do a better job with. There's nothing wrong with going to a community college. There's nothing wrong with going to a four-year university. There's nothing wrong with going with a technical school. There's nothing wrong with getting a skill when you leave high school also. I think that's one of the things that's driving our economy. When you look at the number of jobs that are available out here in Rutherford County now, help wanted, one of the problems is, quite frankly, a skilled workforce. And I think we can do a better job of, a kid may want to go to university and get a degree and come back and start his own company and, knowing that the skill set necessary to be successful. So I think those are the kind of things I would like for us to look at. And then also, I think retention rate of our teachers. I think the last report we got, we had 90%. And I think we got to track that. We also are tracking, return on our investment on our hard-to-fill positions. What kind of retention rate? We're paying them X amount of dollars to be our math teachers. How much are staying with us? Because that's something tangible there. That's money that's being spent to attract others here.
I can't remember, are we paying signing bonuses?
We are. Math, the foreign languages, science, obviously.
So were you referring specifically to those, or if not, are we looking at the correlation of like tracking now that we've been doing signing bonuses for a while?
How many are we keeping?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think I had Dr. Anthony give us a report the last board meeting, but we're still tracking it over 3 years.
Okay.
We're paying X amount of money. What are we, we know if we're keeping them, they're effective. So if we're keeping, if we're keeping 70% of them up to, I think 70% should be a starting point. If we're keeping 70%, I think we're getting a pretty good return on investment.
Does that include those that go through is it the PPE? We certify? Is it?
Or EPP?
EPP, I knew it was one.
We've actually, we're expanding that this year. We got approved to expand that.
It's 3rd level now, right?
Right.
Are we tracking that at all? Are we tracking that at all?
Yes, we are. We have to. We get scores in that. We actually, we got our first score. We did well, obviously for a small cohort. But we're tied with MTSU, so we actually get published, just like we're the only EPP in the state of Tennessee. We actually get published in terms of our success rate and retention.
I could see us maybe recouping some funds from some other districts, sending teachers here.
Well, one of the things, we can take other teachers, but we don't want to use our money to train them, but it may help with maybe a second career for someone that's coming out of the business maybe, I don't know, an accountant or something like that, like Mr. Bodery that wants to go into teaching, and teach math. We can bring them in, train them, they pay a nominal fee to go through it, they take the assessment, and they're ready to go in the classroom with assistance.
Mr. Spurlock, do you know what that fee is?
It's like $200 to $300. That's like,
amazing.
well, you know how much they pay when they go to college? $6,000.
Yes, sir, I know. I was in job embedded.
Yeah, and that's just, that's 3
and
classes.
It was
Yeah.
a huge
yeah.
amount of money.
Now, we-
$1,700 per graduate course and they might have to take 24 to 30 hours to get.
Yeah, most of them is 6 now. They can take 6, but that's still a very, a lot of money. One of the things with that right there is we assign them with a peer tutor, a peer mentor that they work with. We've had, our first cohort was pretty doggone good now, it was a good one. Now that we're expanding it, now we have to have, since we're going into math and science, we have to have those content-based teachers there working with these, making sure,
yes,
they probably know their content, but we got to make sure that,
They don't know the pedagogy.
right, the pedagogy.
Yeah.
So we need
That's when
someone, right,
management does-
absolutely.
I think it's the most wonderful thing that we've done lately, truthfully.
I'll tell you, it was the CTE program, they worked hard at it, yeah.
Such a difference in what these people have to pay.
In budget and finance, I think, when you look at the goals there, in terms of there's some very tangible goals. I think we all understand that this past year, due to COVID and us not being prepared, at one time we had to transfer $1.5 million over into our cafeteria fund. Now, it just so happens that the ESSER 2 helped supplant that, or not supplant it, to supplement that, and we're in a healthier place now with our cafeteria fund. But I think that's something we've got to be cognizant of, and quite frankly, one of the things that created a better surplus this time around were number one, the centralizing the cafeteria during the COVID time. Now, Mr. Smith, who's our director there, he can be responsible of moving people around when it needs to be, and they work like a champ on that. There's some other things that are in the budget and finance that we can give you quantified data on. One of them is the timekeeping. This has been some an experience, to say the least. The food service people jumped on it and just really went through it like a champ. This summer, we've been using it with our classified, and we've been using it with our teachers that are contracted out hourly. So they clock in, they clock out. We know, we track that and things of that nature. In the long run, we're probably going to see, because of the number of paper, how the paperwork we have and what it costs, we'll see a return on that investment. Because it used to be like a ream of paper of what we've been using for a couple reams of paper and sending it up there. But we're actually seeing, even in the short period of time on there, we're seeing a return on our investment in terms of cutting down on the billable hours, and some of these our accountants are doing where they can actually do their job now and not, have that issue. And then I think here in the next couple of weeks, Mr. Lee's going to bring forward our energy audit. What are we getting there? We made some of those ESCO loans that you went out and purchased some LED lighting and things of that nature. So what is that? What is that providing us? Because like I said, that's something the commission even asked about the other night. Like I said, I'm amenable to any of these goals in here. I mean, I think some of them are high, but I think it's what we should be. We should be seeking to stretch ourselves.
Mr. Spurlock, I've got a question for you about under curriculum and instruction. It's not necessarily about one of the goals, just something that I've been kind of curious about. On the Leadership Academy, I'm assuming that, well, and I shouldn't do that, let me just ask the question. Do we wind up getting typically, is that done like once a year, or is it a semester kind of course or class?
Yeah, we actually, in the Aspiring Administrators Academy, we're backlogged now because we did that. When I first came here, we were doing it, and we did it, and then I said, wait a minute, we've got to get some principals. So now, what we're doing now is the principal pipeline.
Right.
So we do have data of who we hired. We've actually hired, the last couple of principals that we've hired actually came out of our Aspiring Administrators Academy. What we typically do with the APs in the Aspiring Administrators Academy, because what we saw, when we were making our hires, a lot of times we were making our hires with an assistant principal and it wasn't working out.
Right.
So we were investing in them, it wasn't working out. So what we said, all right, here's what we're going to do. This is in what we're going to take. We're going to let you go. First of all, we're going to let you apply to go through the Administrator Academy. You get accepted in the Administrators Academy, you're going to meet those 7, nights throughout I think it's 7 or maybe 10, I can't remember, but where they're trained. When you finish, if you're successful in finishing, we're going to give you a 220 teacher contract and supplement you $2,000. And we're going to provide a mentor. After your first year, if you are retained by your principal, then we roll you into a full-time administrator pay.
I think you just hit on where I was headed with the question I actually wanted to ask, though, and that was accepted. So do we get more applications than we're able to accept for that academy?
We do.
Okay. Can you kind of walk us through then what the process, what the criteria is for who gets accepted and who gets rejected?
A lot of it, okay, first of all, we get a recommendation for their principal. They have to sign off, write a letter, and do all that stuff. If they've had some type of leadership role within their building, whatever it may be, they may be a curriculum lead, they may be a dean of students, or whatever. They have their master's degree and have passed their praxis in educational leadership. And they have a good record of their observations and stuff like that. So that they're a good teacher, they've been good in the classroom, and I think there's a minimum of 5, I want to say 5 years of teaching experience.
The criteria is pretty stiff.
It is stiff. But we've really, with instruction and HR working together and budget and finance, they bring in the best. They give them the overview of the entire, what a principal or what an assistant principal would do. And we bring in our other principals and assistant principals to give training too.
What percentage have we hired out of that?
Out of our administrative academy, we were backlogged for a long time. We're not where we want to be, but primarily when an AP position comes available, which by the way, there's one available right now at Rockville High, if anybody's interested in applying. It's about, I want to say, a good 60-70% that we get out of it.
But not all of them get it.
Not all of them get up, and quite frankly, we expect that, because it's, we prepare them, and some, quite frankly, I've seen this happen before. Some of them will go through the administrative academy, they'll have a couple of turn downs, and then maybe the next year they get hired. A lot of it's a good fit,
Any other questions on the strategic plan? Let's get into the performance evaluation instrument. We have a proposal here from TSBA, and I'm sure you all have had a chance to look at it. Is there any suggestions or recommendations on any changes to that tool?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have some questions, a couple things I'd like to have clarified first. And then I guess I've got a question that probably is a Mr. Reed question. I may be jumping ahead of myself here because I do have, in addition to my questions, some recommendations that I'd like to make. So if we do, because I do think it behooves us as a board to really look at this. I mean, I appreciate everything the TSBA does for us, but I think that as an educated board, you know, we need to make decisions that are our own as well. We may not always necessarily be consistent with what the TSBA recommends. And I, you know, felt like that was part of the purpose of doing this and working through it together as a board. So, Mr. Reed, just kind of playing the what-if game, let's say there is something that we decide as a board or that someone wants to present that we think ought to be a structural change to this instrument that they provided us with. Is that something that needs to, I assume it would need to be voted on, right? Yeah, thank you. Because there are several things that I've got questions about where it really isn't clarified in this process exactly how it's going to be carried out. Does that make sense? So there's a couple things that I think we need to go back to the TSBA with questions about, but also a couple of things that I want to recommend be added to the instrument.
Well, I think this has been presented as a start tonight. I think the board chooses to adopt this tonight, you could. If you choose to make changes to it, that's something that you could do as well. If there's questions that you have with regard to the implementation of this evaluation that you want to go back to TSBA with, certainly you can do that. There's not a requirement that you act on this tonight, unless the board, as a majority, decides to do that. This does need to be adopted at least 90 days before you do the director's evaluation. So you have to have some time to get that done by the end of the year. So
Can we talk again about the whole deadline? Because with us having gotten off track, a couple of years in a row now here and everything, and COVID and everything else that's happened in the meantime, the dates are still a bit confusing to me. So I guess I want to know, you know, what is our deadline to get this done? When is the deadline to get?
Let me jump in there. There's a misconception here in terms of when this has to be done. I mean, we've had several directors of schools, excuse me, that had their evaluation for the 2020 this past school year in May. Now, we typically don't do that because you wait till your data comes in and things like that, and sometime in September. But it's my understanding that for this year, we were going to use the same instrument, but for 2022, 2023, we're going to use whatever instrument's created.
Which is what we're working on now.
Right.
correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to be sure. So, and when I say deadline, I guess I'm really talking in terms of, too, what the agreement is in your contract, because we certainly don't want to be in violation of that contract either.
Annual.
Annual review, and says this has to be adopted 90 days before his review is conducted. So, of course, for next year, you've got ample time on that.
Okay.
We are coming into a new school year, and then you've heard the goals and objectives, and I guess, you know, we wanted to try to tie the performance evaluation to the goals and objectives that he has of this year, so you've heard those tonight. So you do have those before you to consider in regards to how you want to conduct his evaluation now. So, but if the question is whether you have to adopt this tonight, you do not have to adopt the evaluation criteria tonight.
But, Mr. Chairman, we need to get this done as soon as possible. It is not fair to have a man trying to look at an evaluation instrument and do what we're asking him to do, but we don't tell him what the instrument is until February. That's not what we want to do, I don't think. I think we want to get this
I agree, but it's
done.
only June. I don't think anybody's talking February. So, and
I
again,
hope
since
not.
this is the 2022-23, you know, performance appraisal instrument,
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It
Because
does.
the year we're coming into, we're using the old instrument.
The old instrument,
Correct.
right, that we've already done once.
And let me just say this, anything that's in here, we're gonna try to get it accomplished, whatever you put in the evaluation, okay?
Sure.
Let's just make that clear. Well, whether we get it accomplished, maybe, but I kinda think. we
You're
will.
aiming for it. That's
Yes,
your
ma'am.
aim.
That's right, so it wouldn't be no surprise.
Exactly.
Just for clarification purposes, though, actually, this, what we're working on currently is for 21-22, not 22-23.
Actually, I thought it was for 22, 23. Because I thought we were gonna keep the old
Yeah,
instrument for the.
that's
20
my understanding too. We've,
For
Oh, no, no, no.
2021.
You're right, hold on, you're right.
Yeah,
It's
2021
22.
is the old
Yes,
instrument.
ma'am, you're right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Last year.
This
Yes, ma'am,
this
you're
one's
right.
fall.
So Tim is up.
Okay,
on
I'm
the,
confused. Y'all get me.
It's confusing.
You're right, it is, absolutely.
So by August 1st, we need this in play. We need to know what we're going to do.
I think that's very, very good.
This is too much.
So it don't have to be decided tonight, but we do have to have a decision by the end of July. All right. What do
I
we
would
want
say
to
if there's any thoughts that people have about the evaluation criteria and you want to share those with the group tonight, it might be a good idea to discuss it tonight so you can start formulating some kind of, see if there's a consensus and agreement on that or not, to the extent you do have initial thoughts on this, rather than waiting until the next meeting and then bringing up something then, having not had a chance to discuss it with everyone. So it's a good opportunity, if anyone does have any points they want to make with respect to the proposed criteria, to go ahead and discuss those tonight, to at least get that discussion started.
Absolutely, because that was my understanding that that's really what tonight was designed to do, so.
I guess, do we want to start with each board member and go down the line and see what your recommendations are, and if you even have any recommendations, and then we get those out on the table and go from there?
I mean, I can start if you want to. I think this is too many pages. A lot of the questions are very similar.
I agree. That's what I
I
noticed.
agree too.
Yeah. I think
Very
they're
redundant.
similar. And actually, on the first page, they've got two questions that are the same.
yeah, the same question. I think 8 and 9 or 7 and 8, yeah, the same question.
So maybe we should go through here and just mark these up and take some of these questions out. And, because I don't know how many pages this is, because it's not marked, but I think there's too many of these.
You know, and that was, and I know it's Ms. Sharp's turn, but when I was going through this and looking at all the questions, and I did not, and I should have, go back to the last one, the instrument we currently have, it seems like it's twice the size. And there seems to be a lot of intermingled redundancy with these questions, and, you know, to me, we're paying the TSBA to do this. I'm kind of asking the question in my mind, and maybe this is what you were getting at, Ms. Sharp, that how did we get from what we've got to the TSBA coming up with this that's got, I think, more categories and a lot more questions? It really just seems to make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be.
But isn't this just a sample
Yes.
from
that's-
which we can choose things? This was not made for us, am I right? Okay, this is not made for us. This is
But
what we
we've never
can
gotten a sample that had this enormous amount of questions. Ms. Sharp, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There's just,
I didn't mean to do
I
that.
mean, perhaps we go through here and circle the ones that we like and they're tallied or something in there. I mean, I don't know how to make it easier. I just think there's too many questions for each one of these sheets, and some of them are redundant and they're,
Could we mark these up
would you like to
individually
read
and give them to TSBA, or maybe we could take that on and revise them based?
It's just an example. Those, you don't have to use any of, all of those if you don't want to. It is used for, it's for you to pick and choose what you would like to use it in.
So the form, the electronic file that you have, can you take questions out and add questions to it? Okay. So then we could just mark these up and say, and then you could go through there. I don't want to give you too much work,
Yeah,
but
we can mark it up ourselves.
if we can mark these up, the ones that we feel that are redundant, and then we can give them to her and she can just,
Mr. Chairman, what I had when I was talking with TSBA and what I thought we would do when I asked for the electronic copies to be sent to all of us, was that we could all modify those copies ourselves, then come back to the meeting and determine, what are the overlaps, and then kind of chisel out an evaluation instrument from that point. Since obviously we haven't done that, we can work through this collectively, and then, today, we're in a meeting, we can work through them and determine what we like, what we don't like, what we want. We've seen the strategic plan, and then take those suggestions to TSBA to verify that that would be acceptable. Ms. Moore said she has some adjustments, which other board members might as well, and then have a final instrument that we can vote on at another date.
And I would agree with that, with the exception of the point, Ms. Johnson, that we would be asking TSBA to tell us if it's acceptable. It's our decision to make if it's acceptable, not TSBA's, so.
I didn't mean that it was. I meant that since this is their instrument, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Page, we often, with our policies and whatnot, we do consult with TSBA, right, just to make sure that, since this is their instrument.
Typically, that's for legal sufficiency, so they help me as like a second set of eyes to make sure I didn't miss a statute, rule, or policy that should be incorporated. So I've never had to send something like this document back. I apologize.
I wasn't suggesting that it was the TSBA's responsibility, just that it was their instrument, and they could help us since they also do tabulate it for us.
If we go through this page by page, line item by line item, we're gonna be here a while.
Yeah.
So what would be the best way logistically to orchestrate people doing it individually and then getting it back? Because again, there may be, for instance, I might have a question in here that I think ought to come out, that somebody else kind of maybe feels passionately that it ought to stay in. But I guess we could do like some kind of side-by-side sort of things after that input comes back in. Again, I don't want to create more work than necessary for Ms. Hopkins, but if we're paying the TSBA to do this for us, I think we could put some of that onus back on them, couldn't we, for the administrative logistics?
We could. I would say my office would be happy to compile your comments as well and try to get boil it down in one version of this if you want to do that. We may not have consistency between everybody's input on questions they want to delete, but we ought to be able to get pretty close on it.
I think that would be great, because that way, too, we've got a legal perspective looking at it as well, not just trying to pull something together administratively.
But I'm willing to do that if you guys want us to do that. That takes it off Ms. Hopkins as well. So and I can read through them. If I see questions that are redundant, I think are redundant, I'll just take them out. Barring someone want, and then it will come back to you, and you, if I've deleted something that you want to have in there, you guys will see it beforehand, and you can put it, recommend it go back in.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, this is TSBA's sample. There is no charge to us. We are not paying TSBA to put this together for us. We haven't made that decision as a board. We have, since I've been on the board, traditionally requested that they tabulate the evaluation, but this is not TSBA doing it for us. If that was the case, they'd be here, probably hold a workshop, or they'd put something together for us and bring it back to us. This is the board doing what the board's, working with the director to create an instrument for us, not paying TSBA to do this, or we'd only have a checks and balances, if you will, with them, just for clarification of what this is, what second set of eyes. But it seems like Mr. Reed can do that.
Mr. Reed, if we could, since today's Thursday, if we could have it back to your office, isn't there a meeting? No, I've got my meetings mixed up, that's August. Can we have it back maybe to your office by the 1st? And that would give us something. When's the next school board meeting? We don't have one until the 13th?
Is a work session.
August 1st is the work session.
July 21st.
Why is that not on my calendar?
August 1st is ribbon cutting?
Did you say July? I'm sorry, I thought you said July 1st, and I thought, I've made another mistake on my calendar. Okay, July 21st.
So would
I
that,
feel better, yes.
would that be appropriate if we could just mark it up in the next week and drop it by your office?
Sure, and you can email it to me or drop it off, either however you want to do it.
And then at the next meeting, we can put that on we could do the policy meeting or discuss it at the work session on the 21st.
So, Mr. Reed, how much time do you reasonably, would you like to have to be able
I
to?
think a week is sufficient.
Okay. So let's see, the 21st is Wednesday. So
What are we doing?
all agree perhaps then that we'll make sure that we have any input that we want to give Mr. Reed on this to his office by the 14th of July?
No, we need to have this needs to be in for a week because he's going to have to compile it. Don't you think?
Well, your notice for the 21st meeting will go out, that Thursday before prior? Tuesday before. Yeah. I probably want you to see the final version of these like the week before the meeting.
Okay, so
So I think, we probably want to get it out so you have time to look at it as board members, the final version of this, that week of the 12th, so you have a chance to look at it. So if we could get comments from everyone by, say, the 6th or 7th, does that give you, I know it's got July 4th in there, so I don't know if people are traveling or not. So say the 7th, does that give you time to get it together, July 7th?
So instead of the 1st, we're saying the 7th?
Yeah.
we'll have our recommended changes
Yes.
in your office by the 7th.
Then we'll get those together, have them out to you as board members the following week. If you have further edits, you can bring those to us at the work session.
Mr. Reed, about how much time do you think it's going to take you to put all this together? Hours, man-hours?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how many comments. If you don't have many comments, it won't take long, but I would think it may take a half day to a day.
I hate to be the student that has to have the teacher repeat the assignment, but could someone repeat the assignment?
I think the assignment is this. I think if every board member will go through and delete the questions that you think are appropriate to be deleted.
Okay.
If you think they're redundant and there's no need for them, or you just don't like the question, delete
Okay.
it. If there's another question you would rather ask that's not in the sheet, write it down and say, I would like to ask this question or have this evaluation criteria added to it. Write that in, and then I'll plug that in. To the extent if there's disputes between what needs to be taken out, and I see kind of a split on the board, like half people want it, half the people don't want it, I'll probably leave it and bring it back to the board and have you guys decide whether you want, as a collective group, whether you want to leave it or not at that point. But if there's consensus on things are redundant, say some of you, I may all agree one question is redundant, it will be gone and taken out. But in the end, it will come back to you as board members to see the final version before you vote on and approve it. So to the extent that, I missed something that you guys are wanting to change or you feel strongly about, you can bring it back to the board. We can discuss it at the work session, and then at the board meeting that following night or Thursday night, you can vote on it at that point. Does that sound fair?
So we need to have everything to you by July 7th,
Yes.
electronically or paper.
Yes. Either way is fine.
Another factor here that we need to be considering, when we get into weighing the sectional averages, qualitative versus quantitative, we got to put percentages on that if we want to use this as part of our tool. I'm more of a quantitative kind of guy than I am qualitative, because qualitative you get into more opinionated discussions, but quantitative you can measure that. You'll know if we hit our goals or not. So we need to be deciding on that too.
But on the Appendix C, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's where I have a lot of questions, so. I'm a little worried about all these data points. Will we have all that? it's not like we can count on the state. I'd hate to be ugly, but
You know, I would say probably September, October.
so you think we'll be able to get something, if we include this in here, you
Beyond
think
a
we'll
lot
be?
of this.
Okay.
It's hard to do something if you ain't got scores.
Those percentages, okay.
That's a truck hits one of the lines.
That,
Remember that one?
do what?
Remember the truck?
Dump truck.
The truck one?
Mr. Jordan
That was up in East Tennessee.
East Tennessee, they shut down everything.
ran over one of them, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
The old, we cut up the line in half in Knoxville and nobody can test in the world.
I got all
You can't make that stuff up.
This makes sense.
Or is there any other discussion that, Ms. Sharp, do you have anything else?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay. Justice, you have anything you don't?
I'm fine, thank you.
He said he left homework.
Ms. Maxwell?
I'm okay.
Okay. Moore?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. They're also included in the packet that the TSBA gave us is our board, I guess, self-evaluation. So we've got really two different instruments here. My question was, do we do these simultaneously? Or, I mean, how do they connect? I mean, they connect obviously, but is there any guidelines or rules for that, or does it matter? I guess it would make some sense that we would evaluate the board at the same time, but I was just curious.
I mean, it just states here that this is a free service. The board can choose and complete the evaluation online through SurveyMonkey or print the survey and scan to complete evaluations to TSBA. The final report will be delivered within 5 business days following the submission deadline, pending all board members submit the survey. So that, we would just need to determine as a board when we'd like to complete that survey. If it's something we want to adapt.
If I may, we actually have a board policy, a district policy that says we are to evaluate annually at the board, but doesn't express when that is. So that was the instrument that was given to us to partner with that policy.
I guess really the key question would be, when did we do our last one?
I have no idea.
We could find that out, that'd be
I think
great.
there was one done last year.
I do too, I just don't remember specifically like what month or anything that it was.
There was no one from 2 other school board members, right? Is that what you're talking about?
I don't remember doing
I'm
it.
talking about the board self-evaluation.
No, I've never done them.
Yeah, I don't think we've done any, I know when you're level 3, you have to do a self-evaluation.
I think we got a copy somewhere.
But yeah, what Ms. Johnson was referencing is, yeah, there is a board policy that says we are supposed to evaluate ourselves every year, and I'm pretty sure that we have. I just couldn't remember specifically when the last one was done.
I don't remember that time frame either. I do remember doing them.
We did one.
So, another question that I had, because on Appendix A, the, I don't know, I'm just calling it a survey or surveying the administrators on performance, I couldn't find anywhere in here that defined who we're talking about when we say administrators that are going to be part of this additional evaluation of the director.
I mean, I would assume it'd be principals. I mean, it's who directly reports to me.
What about central office administrators?
And instructional.
Yeah, that report to you, yeah.
Yeah, all
Assistant
those
director.
heads.
Would it be, when I saw this, that's what I thought too, I thought APs, would it be out of the question or just unheard of to also do a small sampling of other people that work, after COVID and coming out of all that we've been through, maybe hearing from some EAs, not all of them, not all of our employees, but a sampling of different employees as well as administrators. What about something like that?
I actually think it's an excellent idea. I mean, I think, this is a huge position, and I think employees of the system ought to have an opportunity to give feedback. If you just include direct reports, I think you're just getting just a kind of really a very small sampling. I do think one of the things that I would like to ask, though, and obviously we need to talk about that more and decide if we want to expand that outside of just Mr. Spurlock's direct reports. I do think other staff here at central office ought to be a part of that, and I think employees out in the system should as well. But one of the things I think we need to talk about too is how the TSBA is going to administer that. Because when you talk about evaluations, or like we did in the corporate world sometimes, what you would call peer evaluations, where you might send surveys or whatever out to peers that worked with those employees or those managers or what have you, that you're really talking an entirely different ballgame than the board itself or the person that person reports to doing their evaluation, in that we need to be able to ensure the people that are participating in that survey of complete anonymity. And so I would want to ask the TSBA, or someone needs to ask them, how that can be done to make sure that those individuals that are responding to those surveys are assured that their replies or their responses will stay anonymous.
Well, let me help you out with a couple of things here. First of all, I do get surveyed by the State Department of Ed through all our principals anonymous. I don't mind sharing it with you. Second thing, I like the idea of EAs, but I don't work with EAs. I don't work with teachers. I work with administrators. I don't know what a survey to an EA or a teacher is going to tell you. I mean, I don't work directly with them. I do work directly with my principals, and they work. That's who actually they get evaluated on their people, their teachers. So I would have to object to the including teachers and EAs.
I would think it'd be more of a sampling of the central office and direct reports. I don't see how we can measure anybody on people that don't directly report to Mr. Spurlock. I think if we want to get into that, you'd have to look at the principals, maybe setting up a survey for them to evaluate their staff.
And they do have that. The state does that.
Okay, the state already does that. So if that's information we need to see, then all we got to do is ask them to share it. But I really don't want to make this thing complicated. I believe in keeping things simple. There's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel here or anything and develop something that's just going to be hard for board members to try to evaluate. It needs to be something that's attainable, that we can clearly explain to our director what the expectations are, and then we should be able to look at that and see if those goals were met or not. I'm not interested in opinions. Everybody's got opinions, and we start going down that road, and I've been a part of those surveys that's done out here in the corporate world. All we're doing, when you do that kind of stuff, you just open the door for somebody to make a free stab at you. And a lot of times you don't get a lot of good information from that. I'd rather first to base it more on quantitative, and that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, as we're having these conversations and consistently pushing this down, the next meeting, TSBA actually can help us with this, and I hate to keep going back to them, but to legitimize them, the Tennessee School Board Association works with all of the school systems across the state, and in fact, they did help us in developing the instrument that we've been using, I think, last 10, 12 years. So, and I know that Mr. Reed is volunteering to help, and I appreciate that, but we are going to pay him a fee for an hourly rate for him to tabulate this. It might be the same cost to go to TSBA and have them come in, hammer it out, and get it done, instead of us trying to figure out what we're going to do. Clearly, none of us have been a part of making this instrument before, or an evaluation instrument previously. So maybe we can look at, we've saved some money by reducing our board meetings. Maybe we can look at being cost effective and calling them in to help us with this, as opposed to us wandering through this blindly.
The only problem I see is time. I think we're going to be pushed.
I think that's going to push this off, because we're going to have to wait until they can meet with us and everybody else. I think we clearly have a good plan, and I think we're all truly capable of going through this instrument.
Well, I think that in my conversations with them, they understand how important this is and how expeditious this process needs to be. So I would like to see if we can maybe call them in to help us, so that we don't keep, I mean, we were all supposed to be prepared for the last meeting and we got caught up on a date. Now we're here with a time frame to go over this, and now it's too big. So I'm disheartened by the idea that we continue to change the way we're going to do this, and I think we need some direction. And so although we're picking and choosing how we want to do it, I think that consulting with TSBA and working with us to accomplish this goal, whether that takes an entire day, I think it would be worth us looking into.
We do have time to do this. That could be done in August, folks. Am I correct? We only have 2 meetings in August? We could have a third one with the TSBA to hammer this out. I am so worried that Mr. Reed's going to get 7 different opinions on what should stay and what should go, to the point of just being downright confusing. Because as I went through this instrument, I realized that it depends on your point of view sometimes. It depends on where you're coming from. What speaks to me as an educator may not be what speaks to Mr. Young as a businessman. We all have our own perceptions and our own way of looking at this, which I think is why some of these questions might look redundant. And of course, the ones that are repeated, they are redundant. But I just don't want us to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, and I appreciate all those comments. I think the TSBA has already done quite a bit, just giving us this huge instrument, and I keep going back to, I think, sending our recommendations to Mr. Reed to get it whittled down and where we be, that as a board, we're certainly capable of finishing this out from here without having to do an all-day session or hammer things out with the TSBA, because there's plenty of questions to pick from. I think it's just a matter of whittling it down. Mr. Young, I would like to go back to your comment about the evaluations or the surveys, and you raised some good points, but one of the things that I'd point out is some of the things that I'm recommending and that I think was suggested in that Appendix A. I go back to the fact that we are doing surveys like that on some of our principals. So if we're going to make a decision as a board that those kind of surveys, getting opinions back from employees or direct reports, are not appropriate, it needs to be a decision that's made across the board for everybody. We can't treat our employees differently, whether they're the director of schools or a principal or a teacher.
I'm going to go back to the same comment I made previously, and I'm for it. However, I am being served. They do survey my principals anonymously, and I get a report back on it, just like they get a report back. Actually, they have a threshold. They have to meet 45% of their teachers have to respond. So most of them get it, but I get one every year because they do the survey. I don't mind sharing with you, it's 90-something%, 92%.
Who's they?
The State Department of Ed.
And Mr. Chairman, then I will restate a statement that's important to say with this conversation. TSBA, in their recommendations in evaluating instruments, recommend that directors are evaluated, as Mr. Spurlock is stating, but that it goes to their central office staff and only those employees that directly report to the director. They do not recommend and actually discourage going into teachers and staff and beyond whose reports to the director, because those people report to a different authority. So again, I think that it's worth, since we do have time, obviously we're going to move this down a little bit. Can we have Ms. Hopkins look into coordinating with TSBA what time would be available for them to come out that matches with us, and let's chisel this out with some direction from an entity that's done this.
mean, it's a board decision, whatever the board wants to do.
Well, I just want to say I agree with Ms. Johnson. I think this is so important, not only to us, but to Mr. Spurlock, that we need guidance. And I look to them for guidance.
Mr. Reed, do we need to make a motion to that point, if that's what we choose to do?
Yeah, there should be a motion by the board, probably go one way or the other with respect to how you want to conduct, how do you want to develop the instrument for the evaluation, yes. So if you either want to go the route of everyone sending to my office and compiling that, that's one option. If you want to use the TSBA to come and do a session with the board members, that's a second option as well. So, but certainly, whichever direction, there's not consensus on it, should be a motion and voted on.
So then, Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'd like to make a motion that we reach out to TSBA and we ask them to come in and help us with this instrument process at their earliest availability. And
The thing that I think we really need to be careful of here is July has already been a tough month to schedule meetings. So really, we would need to probably get with TSBA and find out what their schedule's like. And then also make sure it's going to fit in with our schedule before we can really, I think, even vote on this. I don't know how we decide that we're going to go that route without knowing what TSBA's schedule is. And then we got to make sure it fits in with everybody else's schedule that's already scheduled vacations and work.
Well, that's why I suggested a call meeting in early August, because we only have 2 meetings in August.
Then in the attempt to do that, then we've missed our window of opportunity if we were to decide to proceed with Mr. Reed handling this as we previously discussed, so.
But Mr. Reed, you could, if it doesn't work out with TSBA and that becomes the result, you would be able to.
Yeah, we can do it whenever the board chooses to have it done, yes.
I mean, I'm listening to, you made the motion, right? Do we have a second?
I second.
I guess we'll need to do roll call here.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So you're going to contact them tomorrow and get back to, email all the board members, let them know. All right, Ms. Johnson, you're next, I guess. Do you have anything else you want to?
As far as the evaluation instruments, no, I agree with Ms. Bratton and the others that it's very heavy. I think it's just a good sampling. I like the quantitative as opposed to the qualitative. But
I'm comfortable with, I would like something that is representative of the job that the director and the system is doing. I think that we need to remember that when we're evaluating the director, we're sending a signal and a message about how well this system is running to our parents and our community. And I'd like to pull personality assessments and opinions out of this process as much as possible. We do a lot of great things, and especially coming out of this last year, when you look and talk to people in the community, whether that's teachers or principals or even parents, I think overwhelmingly you hear a lot of good, and I'd like to highlight more of the good moving forward. So I'd like an instrument that recognizes the hard work that's being put in and the areas where we're falling short and we need to make some adjustments. Nobody's perfect, but I want it to be a true representation of the work that's being done and not opinions of each other.
Ms. Bratton?
I think I've talked enough, Mr. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All right, Ms. Hopkins, you let us know tomorrow what you find out, and we'll go from there. All right, our meeting's adjourned.